So it kind of just sits in there like that. You can see the center of the this tailgate is absolutely beat. So I cut up a perfectly good tailgate. Hey! We found more rust. That is worst case scenario, but that is pretty crazy looking at the tailgate all cut up like that. The patch is completely welded in. Alright guys, welcome back to another episode on the 75 Chevy Blazer. So lately we have been working a ton in the front of the Blazer, getting it all assembled, but now we're gonna be on the rear of the Blazer because we've got a lot of custom fabrication that we've got to do back here. Okay, so one of the first things that Mike is actually going to start on right now is we are gonna be relocating our fuel door. So this stock fuel door actually goes, or the stock fuel neck goes right here, the fuel filler comes through this panel here, and then there is just a cap that sits on the outside of the bedside. But the look that we're actually trying to go for is we just want the entire outside of the Blazer to be completely smooth. So we decided that we're going to delete it and we're actually going to relocate it. There is a company called Fabrication that actually sells a kit that you can relocate it to the tail light. So Mike has it right there. He's going to show you. So it kind of just sits in there like that. And then the tail light bolts to this outside and you open it up and pretty much put your fuel in through here. And it has a little cap that goes over the top of that. So it is going to pretty much hide it. You're never going to know that it's there, but you can see that there is a lot of stuff that we have to cut out of the way just to make this thing fit up into place. So Mike has already started to mark the areas that we have to cut, and he's just going to start trimming it away little by little, and then we're going to get it fit up into place and welded. Well, he is doing that. I'm going to be jumping on the tailgate. You can see the center of the this tailgate is absolutely beat. This didn't come on the Blazer. When I bought the Blazer, it was pretty much just the body and the frame, and that's it. And so I actually found this off of a different Blazer, and this whole entire panel here just has so many dents in it. I tried to fix it the first time and it didn't go very well. So what we're going to be doing is I actually got a tailgate for a 67 to 72 truck. So I'm going to get this tailgate opened up and show you guys why I bought this and how we're going to make these two tailgates become one. Now this is a big risk for me just because this tailgate cost me over $400. So if this doesn't come out good, that's pretty much going to be $400 down the drain. But I think it's going to turn out really good, so it'll be worth the risk. So you can see this is the 67 to 72 tailgate. Now these are on all of the older Blazers, I guess the first gen Blazers and the first gen Chevy trucks. In 73, they changed over to these tailgates because these tailgates actually have a window that sits in here that will roll up. All of these ones had a shell that came down and then closed up to the tailgate. But I have always loved the way that these embossed letters look on the back of those trucks. And so I decided, I was like, you know what? I'll buy a tailgate and I will splice that in right there, because usually these have a big piece of chrome that goes over the top of this, and I'm really just not a big fan of it, especially since we are deleting a lot of the chrome on this truck already. I really didn't want to run that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be slicing this center section out right here, and then also slicing that center section out of there, and then pretty much patching it onto this tailgate. So not only that, I have to fix a couple of dents in here. I'm going to pull them out, get them close as I can, and then also redo this ugly patch because I didn't treat the metal on the inside of this. So we got a ton of work to do today, but once we finish this, it will pretty much finish the rear of the Blazer. So I'm gonna get started on the tailgate, and then Mike is gonna get started on the taillight fabrication. This is when it's so nice to have two people working on the Blazer. Mike and I pretty much just tag team this. He started on the taillight fabrication while I started on the tailgate fabrication. And you're actually not going to be able to see all of this just because we were too focused on what we were doing and didn't realize that my SD card on my GoPro got all the way filled up. And so a lot of the footage was lost, sadly. So while Mike was reading the instructions and watching a couple videos on the taillight fabrication, I was laying out some tape on the tailgate just so I could get a perfectly straight cut. I really didn't want to have to go back and trim and trim and trim. So I was going to cut it straight the first time, and then the plan was just to lay this over the top of the tailgate and trim out the excess. And you have to remember, when doing these long cuts like this, you have to kind of go slow. You really don't want to heat up the metal too much, or else it will start to warp. And this is just one of the areas that I'm not going to warp just because of how difficult it would be to bodywork all of the letters. And really you wouldn't be able to hide it. So this is $400 on the line. So I really took my time and made sure that I went slow and cut as straight a line as I possibly could. Okay, so I cut up a perfectly good tailgate, and pretty much set that embossed lettering on here. That is exactly the look I was going for. I think that's gonna look so good once it's all welded up. So I'm actually gonna go and fix all of my dents first, just because you can see how this whole thing bows in right here, and I wouldn't wanna weld that because I wouldn't be able to pull this up because it's pushed down. So I'll get all this fixed and straightened first, and then I'll trim this to fit, and then I'll get it tacked in and pretty much welded up. Okay, so all of the dents are fixed in this, and then I got this piece cut out, and Mike, do you wanna do the honors? Yay! So we found more rust, and we actually don't know what to do for this just because it's at such a hard spot to get to. We can't get it to it from the backside, and then we also cannot remove this skin because it actually wraps over around the edges. So we would have to cut all of the edges, and that's just so much work. So what I think we should do is I think I'm gonna cut this out because we're gonna cut it out anyway, and then I might just have to cut out a little bit more of this, and then we're just gonna have to build this piece into it, build that brake into it, and then we really just have to expose all the rust. It looks like it's just in the center. It doesn't really look like it's around the edges, but I think that is the game plan. Yay, nay, yeah. Oh, yeah, that is, we'll see. That is worst case scenario, so that sucks. And they actually do not make these tailgates.
It's got places for the water to drain out on here, but
yeah, not in the center, so freak. Okay, well, that really sucks. So I'm gonna pretty much just keep cutting and see how far the rust goes. Okay, so I got the majority of the tailgate cut out, and then really this is only the rot right here. So it wasn't as bad as I thought, but they do not make this brace right here. This is for the rear window regulator, and they don't make it. So we're gonna have to patch it. I'm not really worried about doing all these bends in the metal. I'm probably just gonna cut it out, put it a thicker piece of just flat metal in there, and then weld it up. This is structural, so it does have to be sturdy, but it does not have to have all these bends in it. So I'm gonna work on cutting this out and pretty much getting that patch thrown in, and then Mike is almost done with the taillight patch. You see he's had to kind of trim it a lot just so that rear tail light housing would fit, but it's almost there, and then once that's fitted, we'll show you what it looks like. So sorry there isn't very much footage on this, just because my SD card on my GoPro was full and I didn't know, and so it actually, I don't know how much it recorded. I don't think it recorded any of this, but let me show you guys what I did. So hopefully you were able to see a little bit of this, but who knows. So I had to cut out this whole entire center section because it was completely destroyed. And we are throwing that Chevy emblem right there in place of it. I think it's gonna look really good. I've already kind of mocked it up, and I'm a big fan of how it looks. When I cut this ugly patch in that I first did, there was a lot of rust right here. So what I had to do was actually build a piece out of metal, and I just did out of a flat piece just because doing all of these bends, it's gonna be extremely difficult, and it's not really 100% necessary. This is a thicker piece of steel that I had laying around the shop, and it's gonna do the job great. So this is just gonna sit in there like that, and I'm gonna weld it up, and then the outer pieces will go in after that. I got the entire inside rust sealed. I also got the back of this rust sealed, and then as much of the inside of the tailgate as I could. So I got all this set up, and it's been drying for a couple of days, so it's dry to the touch now. So I'm going to hurry and do this patch, because after I do this patch, I actually have to rust seal the front of this piece, which is gonna sit here, and then also the back of this piece, which I'm gonna build, and the back of the Chevy emblem as well. This is gonna be a couple days process just because I have to wait for the rust seal to dry before I can continue on. So right now I'm gonna get this area prepped, get this piece prepped, and then I'm gonna get it all the way welded in. But that is pretty crazy looking at the tailgate all cut up like that. Looks pretty cool. And then sorry, I also forgot that Mike actually got the taillight almost all the way finished off. I have to go get the bolts to bolt the actual housing to the outside of it, but that is what it looks like. So it is an LED taillight, and you can see it is spring loaded, so when you open it, it sits open like that, and the fuel cap will sit right here. We actually had it all installed, but I didn't get it on camera. So this next weekend, when we finish this up, we'll get the taillight on, and then we'll get all of this on so you could see what it looks like. Okay, and just like that, the brace patch is all the way finished up. I got it in, welded, and then rust sealed everything. That way it will not rust. Also went ahead and rust sealed the back of this Chevrolet emblem that is gonna flip upside down and sit right here. Also got the inside of the tailgate on this side completely rust sealed. So really the tailgate is almost done. I just have to wait for this to dry. Then we can flip it up, start to tack it into place, and then we're gonna have to build this section right here and then weld up the tailgate. But I actually have to wait until this dries in order for me to do that. So I will see you guys maybe tomorrow or maybe the next day. So now that the tailgate is all the way dry, you can see this is the part that we rust sealed. It looks pretty good. And this actually doesn't fit up that bad. I'm really just barely gonna have to trim it in a couple of spots just to make it fit. And then really all I have to do is prep it, and then we're gonna start tacking it into place. So the plan for this is I'm gonna get this prepped. I'm gonna start tacking it along here and along there, and then I'm gonna build this piece. Once I build this piece, I'll tack it in, and then it will be time to final weld the tailgate. So just like that, the tailgate patch was pretty much prepped and ready to go. So I started just by tacking every 1 to 2 inches just to kind of get it level and in place right where I wanted it. And then I was going to go and build the piece on the bottom and actually cut that out of the old tailgate or the new tailgate that I bought. And I'm going to use that piece to pretty much patch the bottom of this tailgate, tack that into place. Then once I have everything tacked into place, then I will start final welding everything. I do this just to make sure everything fits before I introduce any excess heat into the panel. Okay guys, check this out. The tailgate is pretty much all the way tacked into place. So this piece actually really wasn't that bad. I just had to cut it out of the old tailgate over there, and then I just put a little bend in it right here with the brake and then tacked it in place, but it looks pretty good. I mean, I know you can't really see it on camera right now. I wish I could turn it. Once I get this final welded, I'll turn it so you guys can see the letters a little bit better, but it looks so good. So I'm gonna actually start final welding it right now. So I'm just gonna work my way, probably start on the top, work my way across, and then just cool it. You want to make sure to cool the welds. I've said this before, because if not, this sheet metal is so thin it will warp it, and that just causes tons of issues. So I'm going to probably do 3 or 4 tacks and then cool the panel. Now, taking into consideration, bends and brakes are going to be a lot harder to warp just because they're strong. And then all of these letters in here are also going to make the panel a little bit stronger. So it's going to be kind of difficult to warp this, but I really don't want to warp this, and I want to try everything I can to avoid it, just because body working this would be extremely difficult. Getting in these letters and making everything look good is extremely hard. So I'm going to avoid that. I'm just going to make sure I cool it as I go, and we're not going to warp it. Now, this is the most welding that I have done in a while. My back actually started hurting because as I was watching this, it remembered how hunched over I was for, I mean, it was at least 3 hours doing this. But sometimes that's part of the build, and you just have to grind and get through it, and in the end, it is all worth it. Okay, well, the patch is completely welded in. Oh, look right there. You can actually see the Chevy letters. They look super good. Wow. Probably took me about 2 hours to weld all of this, but I mean, I really didn't want to warp it, so I went a little bit slower. Came out really nice. There's absolutely no warpage all along this. It feels great. So last thing I have to do before I finish this tailgate is I have to dress all of these welds. So I'm gonna grind them all, and then we're probably going to mock the tailgate up and make sure everything fits good, just to make sure we don't have to do any more modifications to the tailgate while we have it in metal. So first thing that we had to do was actually tap all of the holes on the hinges. That way the bolts would go in smoothly. And then Mike went ahead and got the tailgate hinges bolted up. While he was doing that, I was actually working on the wing windows up front, just kind of doing some mock-up and test fit. But I later came back and helped him install the tailgate. This really was our main focus for this video, was finishing up the entire rear of this Blazer. So we wanted to get it mocked up to make sure that it lined up good with the rear of the bedsides, and then also lined up really nicely with the top of the bedsides. So we had to make a couple of modifications, remount a couple holes, but no matter what we did, we couldn't seem to get it to fit right. Okay, the tailgate is almost lined up. We've got everything bolted up. The only issue that we are running into right now actually is you can see the top of the tailgate does not line up perfectly with the quarter. It sits a little bit low. So we've tried to Dremel the bolt holes as much as we can, but now we're actually hitting, the hinge is hitting the bottom of the tailgate. So what we're gonna do is grab this jack and we're gonna jack it up and try and bend this hinge or the hinge mounting plate up a little bit so it will be flush up here. Well, we really tried to get it to fit, but for some reason it just would not fit. So I was even on top of the bedside trying to use my weight to get it down, but it would not move. So we decided to grab the torch out, which is always an amazing idea, and heat the actual hinge so that when we jacked it up, the weight of the body would bend the hinge and it would get it to line up. You gotta remember, these hinges didn't come on this truck. These tailgates really never fit good on these trucks. And really the way that we're trying to build this Blazer is a high-end Blazer. We're trying to make all the gaps perfect, all the body panels line up as best we can. So this was a big thing that we needed to fix. And luckily when we heated the hinge and lifted it, it actually bent that hinge right where we needed it. So now it lines up perfectly with the top of that bedside. There was still a little bit of fabrication that we had to do on the tops of the tailgate, so me and Mike hurried and knocked that out, and then finished up little pieces of fabrication here and there just because we wanted to finish the entire rear in this video. Once we had finished all of the rear fabrication, so all the little patches that we had to do and cracks that we had to fix on the top of the tailgate, that was pretty much it for the rear of this Blazer. This tailgate came out so much better than I had ever imagined. When I knew I was going to start building this is exactly what I pictured. It's why it's always good to have a really good imagination when building these cars, and you have to know exactly what you want. I love the way that the center of this tailgate looks, and on top of that, I absolutely love the way that the fuel door came out. This was a monumental amount of work to get the rear of this truck looking this good, but in the end, like I said at the beginning of this video, it is 100% worth it, and this is just in metal. I can't wait to see this thing have some color on it. It's going to look so amazing, and little by little, you guys are going to see us get closer to that step. Alright guys, check that out. Rear of the Blazer is pretty much finished up in metal. So this was a ton of fabrication just to get this piece sitting in here right, and I am absolutely in love with this look. This is exactly what I envisioned when I started this Blazer. I really didn't think it would come out this good, but one of my favorite modifications that we did is probably going to be this taillight. It is just taped on, so that's why it's a little loose right now, but as you can see, it opens up and that is where you put your fuel in. So that's just going to be one of the little custom touches that we do that you're really not going to notice until you get up and close with it. But this was a huge step in the Blazer restoration. So the rear of this is pretty much all the way finished up in metal. All we're gonna have to do now is strip off the black E-coat when we get ready to epoxy this. But don't worry, there still is a ton of stuff to do on this. We still have to get these bedsides pretty much all the way welded on. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think about this tailgate. And of course, what you guys think about this hidden fuel door. Also want to give a huge thank you to everyone who's subscribed to my channel. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers, which is awesome. I really didn't think I would get this far, and I'm glad that you guys are liking the content that I'm putting out. So thanks so much for watching. See you guys next time. Peace out.